Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at something that I think affects all of us online, and it's deceptive patterns. You know those subtle design choices or the wording tricks that websites use to try to influence our actions? Like, think about a time that you might have felt pressured to buy something online because a website had like a flashing countdown timer. Or maybe you've been surprised at the checkout with all these extra fees that weren't really clear before. Well, those are just a couple of examples of deceptive patterns, and we're going to break them down today so you can be more aware of them. To help organize this exploration, we're going to be using a framework called the Mathur et al. Taxonomy. It categorizes these patterns in a really helpful way, and we're going to kind of go through each category step by step.
Yeah, the Mathur et al. Taxonomy is really valuable because it emerged from a large-scale study of thousands of websites. So it's based on what's actually happening in the digital world, not just sort of theoretical ideas.
Okay, well, let's start with the sneaking category. This one is all about tactics that kind of slip things by you without you even noticing.
Right. One sneaky tactic is called sneak into basket. It's exactly what it sounds like. An extra item just mysteriously appears in your online shopping cart. And another one is hidden costs, which involves those frustrating surprise charges that pop up right before you're about to complete your purchase.
Oh, that's so frustrating. It's like they're trying to pull a fast one on you. Why do these tactics work?
Well, they take advantage of how our brains work. For example, sneak into basket often relies on something called inattentional blindness. This is a cognitive bias where we miss things that are right in front of us if we're not focusing on them. You know our attention is limited, so we don't always catch those subtle additions to our cart.
Oh, so it's not that we're not paying attention. It's that our brains are kind of wired to filter out information that doesn't seem important at the time.
Exactly. And hidden costs often play on the power of defaults. Our brains like to take shortcuts, and accepting the default option is an easy way to do that. We tend to assume that the pre-selected choices are the best or the most common ones, and we don't always take the time to really scrutinize them.
Okay, so up next we have the urgency category. And I think we've all probably experienced this one at some point.
Yeah, this category focuses on creating a sense of pressure to make you buy something quickly. So you'll often see tactics like countdown timers, you know, those visually show time ticking away, and then limited time messages, which emphasize that an offer is only available for a short period.
Yeah, those countdown timers always make me feel like I'm going to miss out on a great deal if I don't act right away. Why are they so effective?
Well, these tactics tap into a couple of powerful psychological principles: scarcity and FOMO, or fear of missing out. Scarcity is the idea that things become more desirable when they're perceived as limited or rare. Our brains are kind of wired to value things that are in short supply. And companies exploit this by creating a sense of urgency.
It's like that feeling of needing to get the last concert ticket before they're gone.
Exactly. And then FOMO is the social anxiety that we feel when we think we might be missing out on something enjoyable or rewarding that other people are experiencing. These tactics kind of play on our fear of being left out, making us more likely to make those impulsive decisions.
So it's a combination of our innate desire for things that are scarce and then our fear of being left behind. It's fascinating, but also kind of unsettling to see how these principles are used to influence us online. Now let's move on to the misdirection category, which I think is particularly interesting because it's all about subtle manipulations.
Yeah, in this category, websites use design and wording to steer you towards certain choices without you even realizing it.
So it's like they're nudging you in a certain direction without you even being aware of it. What are some examples of this?
Well, one example is confirm shaming, which uses language that's designed to make you feel bad for opting out of something. For instance, have you ever seen a pop-up that says something like, "Are you sure you want to miss out on this amazing opportunity?" when you try to close it?
Yes, all the time. And it makes me feel like I'm making the wrong choice if I don't sign up for whatever it is they're offering.
Exactly. It's a subtle form of guilt tripping. Another tactic is visual interference, which uses design elements to manipulate your attention. Think about websites that have brightly colored buy now buttons that are positioned next to dull gray add to cart buttons.
It's like they're intentionally trying to make you click the buy now button.
They're definitely trying to influence your choice. And finally, there's trick wording, which uses ambiguous language to mislead you.
It's like they're playing with words to try to get what they want. Can you give me an example?
Sure. A common example is offering a free trial that automatically converts to a paid subscription, unless you take specific steps to cancel it. The wording might be technically correct, but it's designed to catch people off guard.
So they're exploiting the fact that most people don't read the fine print.
Right. They're relying on our tendency to skim information and not fully understand the terms and conditions before we click agree.
It's amazing how much thought goes into designing these experiences. Moving on, let's talk about social proof, which plays on our inherent desire to fit in.
Social proof is all about leveraging the power of the crowd. We tend to look to others for guidance, especially when we're uncertain about what to do. So if we see that lots of other people are buying a product or using a service, we're more likely to do the same.
So it's like that idea that if everyone else is doing it, it must be good. What are some specific tactics that fall under this category?
One tactic is the activity message, which tells you how many other people are currently viewing a product or have recently purchased it. Another one is testimonials, which are those positive reviews from other customers.
I see those activity messages all the time on e-commerce sites. It's like they're trying to create that sense of excitement and urgency. Like, I need to get in on the action before it's too late.
Exactly. And testimonials, even if they're not always genuine, can be very persuasive. They tap into our need for social validation. We want to make choices that are aligned with what others are doing.
It makes sense. We're social creatures after all.
Yeah, it seems we're very susceptible to the influence of our peers, even in the online world.
Definitely. Okay, so up next is scarcity, which, if I'm understanding this right, this is another way that websites tap into that fear of missing out.
That's right. Scarcity tactics focus on creating a sense of urgency by emphasizing that something is in limited supply. Common tactics include low stock messages, which warn you that there are only a few items left, and high demand messages, which emphasize that a product is selling quickly.
Yeah, I feel like I see those low stock messages everywhere these days. Is it even really true that these items are running out, or is that just a tactic to get me to buy now?
Well, it's hard to say for sure in every case, but even if the scarcity is real, these tactics still play on our psychological biases to influence our decisions.
Oh, how so?
They tap into what's known as loss aversion, which is the idea that we feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. So the thought of missing out on a product because we waited too long can be very motivating.
It's like that feeling of losing an auction, even if you weren't that attached to the item. Just the fact that somebody else got it makes you feel like you've lost something.
Exactly. And that feeling of loss can drive us to make purchases that we might not have made otherwise.
Okay, so we've got to be mindful of those scarcity tactics and not let them push us into making rash decisions. So what's next? Let's talk about obstruction. This category sounds a bit more sinister.
Yeah, obstruction tactics are all about making it difficult for you to do something the company doesn't want you to do, typically canceling a service or subscription. The most common tactic here is hard to cancel.
Ugh, I've definitely experienced this one. It's so frustrating when a company makes it nearly impossible to cancel a subscription.
It's a common tactic used to keep you paying even if you're no longer using the service. They might bury the cancellation option deep within their website, require you to call customer service during very specific hours, or make you jump through a bunch of hoops to confirm your cancellation.
It's like they're trying to wear you down so you just give up and keep paying. What's the psychology behind this?
Well, they're exploiting a couple of things. One is inertia, our tendency to just stick with the status quo, even when it's not really in our best interest.
Yeah.
You know, it's simply easier to keep paying than to go through the hassle of canceling.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's almost like we're programmed to avoid change, even when it's for the better.
Right. And they're also playing on the sunk cost fallacy. This is the idea that we're more likely to continue with something if we've already invested time, money, or effort into it, even if it's no longer really serving us. So if we've been paying for a subscription for a while, we might be reluctant to cancel, even if we're not using it, because we feel like we've already put too much into it.
So it's like we're trying to justify our past decisions, even if they're not rational anymore.
Exactly. You know, these companies, they're aware of these biases, and they use them to their advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. So what is the final category we need to discuss? Last but not least, we have forced action, which, as the name suggests, seems a bit pushy.
Yeah, this category is all about making you do something that you might not otherwise do, often in exchange for something that you want. There are two main tactics in this category: forced enrollment and pressured selling.
Okay, so let's start with forced enrollment. What does that involve?
Forced enrollment is when a website requires you to create an account or provide personal information before you can access certain content or features.
Oof, I run into that all the time. It is so annoying when I just want to read an article or watch a video, and they make me create an account first.
It's a common tactic. And it can be effective because they're essentially holding your desired content hostage.
So they're exploiting my desire to access that content. It's a trade-off. Convenience for privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we're just so eager to get to that content that we don't even think about the long-term implications of giving away our data.
That's a really good point. And pressured selling is a bit more subtle. It involves using techniques to try to upsell you or nudge you towards more expensive options.
So for example, if I'm buying something online, they might pre-select the most expensive shipping option or try to bundle additional products that I don't really need.
Exactly. They might also use language that makes you feel like you're missing out if you don't choose the more expensive option.
It's like they're playing on our desire to get the best value for our money, even if it means spending more than we intended.
They are, and they know that a lot of people are susceptible to these tactics.
So it's important to be aware of these forced action tactics.
Yeah.
And make sure we're making conscious choices.
Yeah.
And not just reacting to pressure. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Huh?
It's amazing how much psychology and strategic design go into creating these online experiences. It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
It can be, but now that you're aware of these tactics, you're better equipped to recognize them and resist their influence.
It feels like a whole new world has opened up to me now that I understand these tactics.
Yeah, that's the power of knowledge, right?
Right, it's like having a secret decoder ring for the internet.
Yeah.
You can see through the tricks and make more informed decisions.
Exactly. You're no longer just reacting to these subtle pressures. You're making choices from a place of awareness.
So looking back at our deep dives today, what are some of the key takeaways that you would want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is simply to be aware that these deceptive patterns exist. Once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing them everywhere.
And knowing is half the battle, right?
Absolutely. The next step is to really slow down and be more mindful of your online interactions. Don't rush into decisions, especially when you're feeling pressured or you sense that something isn't quite right.
That makes sense. What else can we do to kind of protect ourselves from being manipulated?
Pay attention to the design and the wording of websites. Are they using, bright colors or large buttons to draw your attention to certain choices? Are they using language that makes you feel guilty or afraid of missing out?
So it's about being a more critical consumer of information online.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to question things. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Read the fine print, especially before you sign up for any subscriptions or free trials.
And if a website is making you feel uncomfortable or pressured, just walk away. There are plenty of other options out there.
That's such an excellent point. You always have the power to choose where you spend your time and money online.
Well, this has been so insightful. Thank you for shedding light on these deceptive patterns and giving us the tools to navigate the online world more confidently.
It's been my pleasure. I hope this information empowers our listeners to be more aware and to make more informed choices online.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has been valuable for you as well. Remember, knowledge is power, and now you have the knowledge to spot and resist these deceptive patterns. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you on our next deep dive